Welcome back to Michigan Sports Media Network, and as always, your host, Jay Sweet. I have Brad Thompson, our lead Tigers reporter, and then James Gullett, our lead Red Wings reporter, with me as well. As always, we're going to start, well, not always, but for the most part, we start with some Tigers. So we're going to get that out of the way first. So, Brad, the floor is yours.
All right, good evening, gentlemen, and happy St. Patrick's Day to all the drunks out there right now. So, I had to navigate on 75, a little fun today. So, guys puking on the side of the road and, using the force driving home. So, anyways, start off. Unfortunately, I want to start off with a little bit of bittersweet news here. Came across today that Kirk Gibson will not be any longer with the Tigers TV broadcast team. I think, as everybody knows, Gibby's in the fight of his life with Parkinson's disease. He's doing okay, but he does want to put all his efforts into his organization and what he's built there. So hopefully everything's okay there. He is going to come out and make some statements and things. And, I mean, no one will ever forget 84. No one will ever forget it. He's just a legend. Michigan State, he would have been the number one pick overall in the NFL by the Arizona Cardinals. Tremendous football player. Obviously, know what he's done in baseball. He's been with the Tigers since 1977 when he had the stint with the Dodgers, winning the World Series, and then went to the Arizona Diamondbacks to be a manager. But this guy's a Detroit legend. He is. I mean, the home run in '84. I still think they should put a statue of him there with a colossal. I think it exercised a lot of demons out there. But so unfortunately, we won't be hearing him, this spring and summer. In other news, Jace Young, not surprising to me. I don't think it's going to be surprising to anybody else. He was sent down today. He was hitting a $121 up here or up with a big team. He's had his struggles. He's fighting the game right now at the plate, so I think it's the right move to do. He came up here for 37 games. He was part of that, of that young group we brought up that gave us that infusion of talent. That's what kind of gives me a little worry, though, to be honest with you, is that infusion of talent was great over 38 games, and over the course of that run, is it going to translate now into a 162-game year? I think Trey Sweeney was part of that group. Parker Meadows was part of that group. So hopefully that works out. At third base now, you're looking predominantly at maybe Zach McKinstry and Andy and Baez, and then I was a little surprised about seeing Javi Baez over there, but then again, maybe I wasn't, because Sweeney is a plus defender, and people may say, well, it's El Mago over there. Well, El Mago he's a lot of sizzle. Defensively, sometimes he's not all steak. He can be a little lax over there. His arm can be a little errant. So, it's doable over there. It might have to be doable just because he is a good glove. I don't know, but you're going to need some defense over there. And quite frankly, I think you're going to need to make a move. I think around May, hopefully, again, when I do the 2+, 2- around there. But, man, I don't know. Third base might have to be addressed. And just floating something out there. And I've got no, credibility out there. I shouldn't say credibility, but I've got no feelers out there for anything. But, Rafael Devers is not having fun right now in Boston. His defense is okay, but he's an elite player. He's a top 10 hitter in baseball. But he is definitely not happy because he is in the DH role right now. Keep an eye on it, because if third base is as bad as it may be, could be something that the Tigers may want to investigate. With going down to was Sean Gunther. Really not that big a surprise. His ERA was a 0.18, which is basically a lot of people on the roads. The bar's breathalyzer PBT right now, but he was horrible. He did come up here and throw well. He's got good heat. I don't know. We might see him go down, figure it out in AAA, and be up here on those bullpen days. Who knows? In other news, this is honestly, hey, look, he's hitting great, and I think it's awesome, but it's kind of scary when they mention Spencer Torkelson out in right field. Okay, he's not even that good at first base. Okay, I mean, everybody says, "Oh, he's a former shortstop," and you know what? He's not a plus defender even at first base. So we're gonna trot him out to right field. Okay, cool. I've got zero problem with Torkelson at first base and DH, and I'm glad he's hitting better. But if we've got him out in right field, folks, that's telling me a lot of stuff to worry about. That is telling me that Matt Vierling is perhaps nowhere near being ready to go yet. So, in better news, Wenzel Perez made his first start out there today. I'm not sure how they did. Game was wrapping up right when I left work, so it's good to have him back because we're going to need him out there. Riley Green, I think this year he's going to, and I think it'll be a big help for the Tigers. It's starting to look like this is his ball club. I think the Tigers really, they weren't a ship without a rudder. I think it was leadership by committee. But Riley Green now, he is the best. He's the best left-handed left fielder defensive player in the game. He's a top 25 player in the game, in my opinion. And he's starting to have more of a voice from what's being said out of Lakeland. He's always done his leadership through the way he prepares, goes about the game. But now he's taking some of these new guys under his wing. He is not a seasoned veteran, but he is a veteran on this ball club. We got to remember, this is the second youngest team in baseball. So Riley Green is, quite frankly, he Javi Baez is the oldest, but Javi's Javi. Riley's starting to step up in that role, and that's something the Tigers definitely need. So that is good news to hear. And lastly, what a great Sunday for the Pups yesterday. They absolutely shined. Max Clark did fine. He hit great center fielder. What he did was he made a veteran play. There was a guy taking a hard turn, looking to go to third base, put the brakes on. Usually a center fielder will just come up, get the ball in immediately to the shortstop, or even throw through because the guy was running pretty hard. Clark out there had a veteran heads-up play. He threw behind the runner, second base, nailed the runner. All right, that is something that is instinctual. That is not something that it just comes boom. And for having instincts like that for a 20-year-old, that is pretty damn good. Very impressive. Also, Theron Lozano just hit a missile for a double. He is a power guy for the Tigers, and they say his future is behind the plate. Kevin McGuingle, playing third base yesterday, made a dazzling play. He hasn't gotten any higher than A-ball. They're going to start off in double A, though, but he's had a fantastic spring. And 19-year-old Bryce Rayner, shortstop, first major league action, went 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs. So these kind of showed why he is a first-round draft pick. So what we should get excited about is, guys, with those names that I just named, you've got your middle there. You've got your catcher in Lorenzo. You've got your shortstop in Rayner. You've got your center fielder in Clark. You've got McGuingle, who could play second or third. Then you got Hao Young Lee, who will play either second or third. We're talking a core that's going to be around for a long time. And these are just like wishful hoping they'll do all right. These guys are legitimate all-star type players. So it's really a feel-good story here. All they've got to do is keep progressing. Add a sprinkle in a free agent there. You got Riley Green. The sky's the limit. If they, with Jackson Jobe, they're going to get a Scooble deal done. I'm pretty damn sure about that. You get another veteran pitcher and some pitchers that are on the way. This team's not going to be going away. This isn't going to be a flash in the pan. I think they do take a step backwards this year, maybe just based upon the youngsters who really came through. I hope I'm wrong. I haven't made my predictions yet, so we will see. But that's all I got.
All right, and thanks for that, Brad. So, like you mentioned before you told us about the Tigers, it is St. Patrick's Day, and I figured what better way to celebrate that than take a little drink on the pod. Was supposed to be green. It's more of a yellow. Kind of looks like a leprechaun's piss, maybe. But
all right.
But so yeah, I've got some whiskey in here with a little bit of Sprite and some dye. So let's go ahead and take this shot for the boys at home watching. Ah. All right. Now, we can do this pod the right way. No, but with that being said, I will pass it over to James, our Red Wings reporter, and the floor is yours.
Hey, hey, Hockey Town. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And for the very first time in Michigan Sports Media Network's history, the Red Wings have won a game that I can report on. We finally got a win. And not only one, we got two. So let's get on to our little bit of a hot streak. We did have a loss in between those two wins, but 2-1 in our last three is a hell of a lot better than the 0-6 we were before that. I'll start with uh, beating Buffalo on Wednesday last week. After the pot on Wednesday, we beat the shit out of the Sabres 7-3. It was Peter Mrazek's first start. It was a classic old school hockey game. Plenty of fights, plenty of physicality. I won't say dirty hits, but ones that would get the players on the ice attention more so than just I would say the average. Both teams were getting chippy. Towards the end of the third period, there was an entire line 5-on-5 brawl that had, I want to say, 9 to 10. It might be all 10 players in the penalty box. Some had game misconducts. When it was all said and done, the Buffalo Sabres only had 6 players on their bench to play the remaining game with, in addition to the 5 on the ice. So half their team was pretty much kicked out of the game. A handful of Red Wings were as well. But it was just a very physical, old school hockey game. It was fun to watch. It was our first win in a while. Mrazek got his first win back with the Red Wings. I was shocked by that, but it happened, so I am happy to report that. On Friday, unfortunately, we fell to the Carolina Hurricanes 4-2. It was a pretty lackluster performance. I was really hoping that we would build on our win, but other than DeBrincat, who is red hot right now, he added another goal on Friday. And Mrazek played surprisingly well. We lost 4-2. He only allowed 3 goals. The fourth goal was an empty net that the Wings pulled him trying to get the extra attacker on. But he stopped 28 of the 31 shots. He's been so far so good for the Wings. And then with him playing well, they started him again for the third time in a row on Sunday's game. Just riding the hot hand, like Coach McClellan said. He's like, I don't care, what your contract says or how much we're paying you. I just want someone to stop the damn puck. And right now, that's Mrazek. Once again, surprisingly to me, but so far in this limited time span, he has been the best goalie for the Wings. And Sunday against the Las Vegas Golden Knights proved it. Because here we are on Monday talking about a 3-0 win, and he had an 18 save shutout. 18 saves is very low in terms of a shutout. I've seen some periods with 18 shots on it. So I'll tip my cap, if I was wearing one, to the defense, getting in front of the block shots, trying to take away those passing lanes and whatnot. It was not only like you can't complain about a shutout win, but Vegas is heavily favored. I think Vegas was favored by more than 2 goals, and we just outplayed them at every facet of the game. They were on day two of a back-to-back, but every team has those now and then. No excuses. We out-hustled them, outworked them, and got the win. So kudos to the Wings, taking 2 of their last 3. Tomorrow night, we unfortunately have the honor of playing the Washington Capitals, who is absolutely a buzzsaw right now. They won their last game. They have a total record of 44, 15, and 8. Ovechkin is only 8 goals away from the record. And we played them 10 days ago and got out to a quick 2-0 lead. And I'm like, maybe they're going to surprise us, only to unfortunately blow that and lose 5-2, completely being dismantled in the second and third periods. So hopefully we can come out to a hot start, learn from our mistakes. I do not know if Mrazek's going to go a fourth game in a row. That would be a lot. But with McClellan saying he's going to ride the hot hand and he's coming off a shutout, who knows? There are 15 games to go in this season. That is a possibility of 30 more points. Granted, I do not believe we're going to go 15-0 to get all 30 points. But as we sit right now, in terms of the playoff race, the Ottawa Senators had kind of pulled away from the rest of the crowd for that first wild card spot. They are 5 points up on even the second place wild card team. They are, unless they have a collapse, kind of like the way the Wings did. No one's catching them. And then there are six other teams, all within 4 points of each other, fighting for that last spot, the Wings being one of them. So even after our collapse the last 2 weeks, going back to the 6 game losing streak, right now, as we sit, we have a game in hand on New York, and we are only 2 points behind them. So if they can lose their next game and we can win our next game, depending on how the others go, we will at least be tied. New York does hold the tiebreaker for the most regulation wins out of the two teams. However, I mean, that would make it 14 games to go for both teams. And I mean, it's just a shootout, best of 14 in a way. Nothing before this point really matters anymore. And it is an absolute cluster of teams all within 68 to 72 points of each other. So hopefully, and we do play the Senators again later in the year. So hopefully, if we can help ourselves out, trying to keep winning just 2 out of 3, hope for some help around the league also. I know scoreboard watching is not a popular thing with the fans, but it is what it is. But surprisingly, we are still in this race at least. I thought we were going to be dead. I thought we were going to be out of it. And I mean, I would love to eat some crow and have us make the playoffs. I wish I was wrong, but I never I never would have thought. Maybe because it's St. Patrick's Day and I have had a drink, but I never would have thought that Peter Mrazek might save the Red Wings season. Like you can go back on the prior podcast. I not a big fan of his. His stats were his stats. I just read them off the page. I didn't make them. And somehow he's at least currently hot, and he, like I said, maybe he seems to be the one that's turning this around, and we will put our playoff hopes on his shoulders between him and DeBrincat, because DeBrincat has been our best scorer so far. So we'll see what happens going forward, but that's what I have for you on the Red Wings right now.
Awesome, James. Thanks for that information. And also, it is great to see the Red Wings finally winning some games. It's really awesome that we don't have to come on here and, well, we lost another one and we ain't doing shit. So, you know, it's always much better to talk about winning. And speaking of winning, the Pistons are back. As we've talked about before, Detroit basketball, baby. We have, obviously, their last game was a loss against OKC, but it is what it is. OKC is one of, if not the best team in the NBA this year. And I shouldn't probably say this on this podcast, but OKC has been my favorite team since I was like 9 years old. Pistons are always good too, but when I started getting into basketball, they were just not very good. So I didn't really have much to watch. So started off as an OKC fan, so I was rooting for OKC in the game, you know, honestly. But it wouldn't have been, it's one of those, I appreciate that, Brad. I'll always take it. But it's not one of those like, oh, if OKC loses, I'll be pissed. It's just, that's who I really want to win, but if the Pistons won, I wouldn't be mad. But with that being said, we do have some controversy surrounding this game, okay? Now, the refs, okay, obviously there was some stuff going on at the end of the game there when Cade Cunningham got thrown out. You know, seemed like an unnecessary step taken, I would say. It felt just, you know, just a little much. But I will say, with that being said, Cade was not having a good game, man. And that just goes to OKC's defense. Like, OKC has the best defense in the league and maybe one of the best defenses ever, like, of all time. So it's not a surprise. Yeah, Brad, I'm not saying that because I think that necessarily, but I'm reading that all over the place. Their defensive rating, the way that they can guard like 1 through 5 on all positions. I mean, their center, Chet Holmgren, he can play, you know, on the perimeter or guarding pretty much anybody. And he's not going to lock down, you know, LeBron or anything like that, but he can guard him. But that being said, that's not necessarily my opinion, but that's some things I've been hearing. So Cade Cunningham having a bad game is no surprise to me, basically, is what I'm getting at. Going up against that defense. And the way that they were playing him was very physical, you know. They're switching on him. They're making sure he doesn't get any easy shots or any easy passes, which is kind of Cade's bread and butter. You know, he kind of out smarts the defense a lot of the time, I think, versus just, you know, I can pull up from 40 like Steph Curry, or I can just blow by you like I'm Westbrook. But with that being said, he did get thrown out of the game. OKC ended up winning, but I know this is a Michigan sports podcast. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the MVP of the league. I'm sorry, but when you watch, have either of you guys watched the highlight from Shai against the Pistons? He looked like prime Kobe. You watch that, it is like, put it side to side, that's Kobe. Like, it's the way he was moving, the way he was making these shots, the way he was turning it on in clutch time. It was just, it was insane. And there's really no answer for that in Detroit right now, unfortunately. Like, it would have taken Cade dropping 30 or 40 along with him to actually make that a possible game for the Pistons. But there are a lot of, you know, free throw merchant, you know, all this and that going around with Shai right now, but that's something I just completely disagree with, and the stats would agree with me as well. The OKC Thunder, I think, are like 28th in the NFL, 28th in the NBA in free throws attempted per game, and Shai is averaging, I think it was 8.3 free throw attempt per game, where guys like James Harden, Joel Embiid, I can't remember who else was on the picture, but they're all averaging 10 this year. So that just kind of shows that free throw merchant stuff's a little overblown. But with that being said, I think the Pistons still did a pretty good job in the game. Like, they were in the game for the most part against one of the best teams in the whole NBA, while their best player was almost dropping 50. So I can't really ask too much more, other than Cade put up another 10 points and maybe we're in it a little bit more. But with that being said, I will pass this over to Brad if you have anything on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, SGA, he's the, in my opinion at least, he's the hands down MVP of the NBA. I mean, the guy's playing on another level than anybody right now. I think there's him than everybody else. Best defensive team in you know, ever. You know, there's the one guy out there that I just simply cannot stand in sports media, and that's Stephen A. Smith. Just my opinion, okay? But I'm going to do a Stephen A. Smith. What? That's blasphemous. That's blasphemous. Are you serious? Well, let's see. The 91 Chicago Bulls comes to mind in defense. All right. And then there's a team that I don't know where they were. Oh, that's right. They're in the Palace, the Bad Boys. Okay. Isaiah or Joe would have locked down. All right. Locked down SGA. And I know we're talking about their defense, but Pistons defense, you go back in your history book, turn on the tape, okay? Rick Mahorn, Bill Laimbeer, Joe Dumars, Dennis Rodman. Come on. Dennis Rodman was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. Joe Dumars twice. They made the Jordan rules because of the Pistons defense. Okay, so when you got rules, you know, when people are following the Jordan rules that the Pistons invented, that's best. That's one of the best defensive teams of all time, if not the best. But 91 Bulls too. That, I mean, don't get me wrong. OKC's got a great defense, best in the league, maybe the best over the last 5-10 years. But you got to go back in history's book to see a top flight defense like the Pistons had. It was special. I would love to have seen Mahorn on Chet Holmgren. He'd have him in the fetal position at half court. But I digress. I think what's going on here is I think the Pistons have earned this Detroit versus everybody. Okay, because Cade getting that second tech was absolutely fucking ridiculous. Okay, that was the official trying to be bigger than the fucking game. All right, absolutely ridiculous. It proves to me that we are not respected yet. Cade is not respected yet on a superstar level. All right, he was given very short leash. In fact, in my opinion, from the camera angles, he really didn't even say much. Okay, I'm not going to compare him to LeBron because LeBron can get away with a lot, and rightly so. But he doesn't get as much leash as an SGA. He doesn't get as much leash as a Luka or anybody like that. And he has proven this year that he is a superstar, that he is box office. So him getting teed up twice that early, completely disrespectful. I don't know if anybody saw the interview with JB Beckerstaff, but he was pounding that table so hard his water bottle was bouncing up in the post-game press conference about it. And it's not, this team is not respected yet. They are a feel-good story, but it is. And I'm telling you, this is the Red Wings have had it, the Lions have had it, the Tigers have had it. They've had their Detroit versus everybody moment. Well, guess what? Welcome to the club, Pistons, because that was a Detroit versus everybody moment right there. I think everybody around here's had enough. This team is legitimate. This team is incredible for the NBA. It's a feel-good story. They belong up with the they're what are they at? The six seed right now? Yeah, that's a pretty good story from winning 12 games to a 6 seed. Cade Cunningham is a superstar, folks. Start giving him the respect he deserves. That's really all I got.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you brought those teams up because, yeah, you're right. They did have a better defense because they could fucking tackle people. That's what the Jordan rules were. They would literally fucking tackle him out of midair. They can't do that anymore, unfortunately,
because
for
they
OKC.
put skirts on him.
So
they run around his skirts now.
So if you look at the statistics, right, OKC has a 106.2 defensive rating this season, right, which obviously is going to be worse than the Bulls back then because people didn't score like they do now. But they have a bigger discrepancy between OKC right now and the second team in the NBA than the Bulls did over the second team in the NBA back then. So just some food for thought, just to think about. Because you're right, they did play better defense, but they were allowed to tackle people. So it's like we kind of have to look at it through a different lens in today's NBA, simply because of the fact that they can't even really hand check anymore. And I feel like, they're getting a little bit more physical now than they have been in the last, say, decade or so. The last 2 years, I think, are getting a little bit more physical on defense, but even then, they're not allowed to do a whole lot. So, but with that being said, I'll pass it over to you, James, if you have anything to add.
The only thing I wanted to touch on is the Bad Boys were a little bit before my time. However, of course, everyone's heard of them. But when talking about defense, I just wanted to chime in and say the going to work Pistons. Like between Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace, Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun, Chauncey. I can't remember at what point in time in the season it was, but I remember they held four straight opponents to under 70 points. And it was insane watching a basketball game and the final score was like 75-68. But I'm like that's just where my head is. I can just remember Ben Wallace absolutely, I was gonna say abused, but get physical with guys. But like you said, you had not quite the tackle rules at that point because Jordan rules have already been in place, but it was still more physical then than it is now. And then I haven't seen an OKC game besides when they played the Pistons this year, so I can't really speak on them. But if they're better than Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, and those guys, then my hat's off to them. I'll just have to take your word for it.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I'm not necessarily saying this is the case. It's just kind of what people have been talking about because the stats are there to kind of back it up. And the last thing I'll say about it is the 2025 or 2024-25 Thunder currently have a league, what is it? A difference of 8.69 in terms of defensive rating, okay? The next best team of all time is the 2003-2004 Spurs, and that with an 8.5, and then the next best team is the '08 Celtics with an 8.2. So just taking those stats into consideration, I think they at least have an argument, you know what I mean? And with how today's basketball is played, obviously they're not going to be necessarily as good defensively as those other teams were, but I think they could at least belong in that same conversation, you know. And obviously the season's not even over yet. We still have, you know, a month and a half or so to go. So that stat could always change. It could get worse. It could get better. I mean, you know, it is what it is with that. But with that
They're
being,
by far the best in the league. There's them and there's everybody else.
yeah, that's for sure. And I like it's what I said before with the switching and the ability to basically OKC made their entire team to be able to guard anybody 1 through 5. Like that's why they went and got Hartenstein, because that way they can play Chet at the 4 if they want. They can have Ihart at the 5 and J-Dub at the 4. So they just did a really good job building it too. And then the coach obviously does a really good job. If you're watching this, it's because you love sports. If you love sports, why not show that love with some new gear, like the 2 jerseys behind me? Fanatics has a lot of stuff on sale right now, and if you go down in the description, click the link of whatever team that you want, it'll take you to the Fanatics page, buy some stuff, and we get a small portion. It'll help us out, and you'll get some discounts on some good gear. But with that being said, now we will move on to some March Madness, because this Thursday it starts. It's round 1, and tomorrow night is the what is it, the first 4 or whatever. And then obviously Thursday is when the true March Madness bracket starts. Michigan State, they're in the dance, baby. We did it. A lot of people, you know, were worried Michigan wouldn't even make it with how they were looking towards the end of the year. And then they went and won the whole Big Ten championship or Big Ten tournament. So they were a shoo-in at that point, I feel like. And a lot of people think they were snubbed, which, you know, I'll let Brad have the floor on that one. I won't go too far into that. And then, you know, they got the 5 seed, which isn't terrible. But MSU has the 2 seed, which I think is pretty well deserved. Tom Izzo gets himself back into the dance yet again. We could see a Michigan State run. I think, like, legitimately, we could see both of those teams make it pretty far into the bracket. But with that being said, I'll pass it over to you, Brad, and you got the floor.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't have any horse in the race, you know, because, you know, I'm Indiana alum, and I don't want to hear any crying that we didn't get in. We didn't deserve to be in. So I'll leave it at that. Do not cry for us, Argentina. All right. But man, Michigan, they got screwed. All right, they got screwed in that seeding. I mean, the NCAA didn't even give them a reach around, for Christ's sake. Okay. Now this is what it. The facts don't. It just proves that it's ridiculous. Michigan beat Wisconsin in the regular season. Michigan beat Purdue in the regular season. Michigan beat Purdue in the Big Ten tournament. Michigan beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament. Wisconsin's a 3 seed. Purdue's a 4 seed. Michigan's a 5 seed. Michigan beat Maryland. Maryland's a 3 seed. Wow. That, to me, there is no explanation of that. That guy can come out of his little room and say with a little North Carolina blue tie, well, this is what we thought of. This is what we thought. Dude, stop, okay? You're lucky you got out of that room alive because your team got in. And West Virginia with 6 quad 1 wins, by the way, and beating Kansas at Kansas. They're at home right now. But I don't want to go off on a tangent there. You know, it's not just the 5 seed. It's the team they're matching up against. University of San Diego was flat out legit. They are the 36th ranked team in the nation. Okay, let's give a little food for thought here. The defending champs, UConn Huskies, are the 30th ranked team in the nation. So we do not get a lot of their games out on the West Coast. They're a little bit above a mid-major, but this team went 30-4, and they're riding a 15-game winning streak right now. Okay, their defense, they're averaging, all right, 61.6 a game is what they're giving up right now. Speaking of great defenses like we have, this is an incredible defense. They get their turnovers, all right, and U of M is a turnover-prone team, all right. It's going to be 2 different styles. Michigan's going to, play the Twin Towers there, okay. Now, the advantage that Michigan has, without a doubt, is the tallest guy on University of San Diego. He's 6'8". So you're gonna see a mix in there. You're gonna see Cheddar. You're gonna see Golden. All right. So they're gonna play big ball a little bit. All right. I think what you're going to see is them probably want to slow the game down a little bit. San Diego who shoot their threes with the best of them. So and remember, there's always been a 5-12 upset. There always has been one for God knows how long. The streak has never really been broken in a long time. I'm not saying Michigan is going to be that team, but boy, it sure sets up for it. And then with the 5 seed, if Michigan wins, their reward is playing probably Texas A&M in the next round. So they really did a number on Michigan with the seeding. A lot of experts, a lot of people in the know are taking San Diego all the way to the grade 8 and at least the Sweet 16. So I really hope Michigan wins. Man, I don't know. I can tell you right now that it ain't going to be easy. Now with Michigan State, obviously being a 2 seed playing a 15 seed in Bryant, they should be able to handle their business. Of note, Bryant is coached by Phil Martelli Jr. Phil Martelli Sr. was on the staff of Juwan Howard's for many years at U of M. Good friend with Tom Izzo. So there's a little bit of history there. They're a mid-major, but with the portal now, they've got 4 starters that came over from St. John's in Memphis. So these are guys who came over from big Division I programs. The big boys, and they know how to play basketball. They do. It's basically going to be MSU versus a poor man's MSU. They play similar styles. If MSU does what they're supposed to do, they'll handle their business. I would like to see Adkins step up his game a little more. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm going to keep a real big eye on Holloman. Not so much about his game, but quite frankly, in my opinion, he cost Michigan State the basketball game against Wisconsin. He got no reason. He's a co-captain now. There was no reason for him to get that technical. Okay, they lost by 3. All right, but that was a 2-shot foul. Okay, a technical was 2 shots. Yeah, granted, it would have been 1 point, but that's giving them points. Plus, if you look after that technical, they went on a cold streak, big time. So he really did kill a lot of momentum. He's really got to watch himself. Once is okay. All right, naughty, don't do that again. He's done it twice now. So he better keep his emotions in check. All right. What was funny is Izzo being Izzo, you could read his lips because Holloman didn't even know he got a technical until someone told him, and he looked around at Izzo with his palms up, and Izzo, you could see it. He goes, "Yeah, you got a technical, you fucking idiot." You could read his lips. So, but you can't do that when they get into bigger games down the stretch here. Hopefully Michigan can pull through and get on a good run because these teams are in the same region. So if they would match up, I believe it would be in the grade 8, and that would sure be something to watch. So, having said that, that's all I got.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Brad. Obviously, I am personally a Michigan fan, but I will always root for Michigan State as well when it comes to March Madness. Really, when they're playing anybody else. I mean, I've been to Michigan State games when I went to the game when they played Rutgers last year, the game that they played Nebraska 2 years ago for football. So, I mean, I'm not one of those Michigan fans that hates Michigan State. I only hate them when we play them. So, with that being said, go green, go blue. Hopefully somebody can make some noise this year. And usually it is Michigan State when it comes to March Madness. So Michigan's had our few times, but with that being said, let's move on to some Lions news. Obviously, Tim Patrick was just re-signed last week, which is huge. I think 1 year, $4 million. Shows that he wants to be here for one, shows that we wanted him back, obviously, but pretty cheap for a guy that can play. He had a pretty solid season last year, over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns as a wide receiver 3 in an offense that features, probably 4 guys that get the ball before he does in the pass game alone. You got Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, J-Mo, and Jameer. I would probably say would go over him in the pecking order, and to still have, it was almost 40 catches on the season is pretty solid. It seemed like Goff kind of started to really enjoy him at the X, and he's a true X receiver at 6'4", 220 or 210, I think. So I'm glad that we brought him back. And then another news, we signed quarterback Kyle Allen, which I don't know how to feel about this. My assumption is he's going to be like a QB3. Maybe he'll fight Hooker for the 2 spot. That's kind of what I feel on that. I've been hearing some, small rumors of um, uh, him potentially pushing Hooker out of the building entirely. I don't know about that. Maybe if we could trade Hooker for a 3, that's the only real way. I don't see us, and that's not going to happen. I mean, I don't see anybody giving up a 3rd-round pick for a 29-year-old. He's about to be 29, I think.
What?
Quarterback. Yeah, he's old, man.
27.
He was drafted. When he was 27, I believe.
Oh my.
So
It's
yeah,
27 now.
he's. Oh, he's 27 now. Okay, so what was he?
Yeah.
25 when he was drafted.
25 when he was
Okay, so
drafted. He's
yeah.
currently 3 years younger than Golf.
Okay, so yeah, he'll be probably 28 during the year then, which is probably what I was thinking. But either way, I don't see him getting pushed out of the building for a guy like Kyle Allen. It just wouldn't make sense to me. I would say one of them is going to be our QB3, and it's most likely going to be Hooker. I would say because they felt the need to bring in Bridgewater last year. To kind of be our backup during the playoffs, which to me does not bode well for Hooker or his future in Detroit. And being that old too, he's not going to be somebody like when we drafted him. I kind of understood it if it's like so we don't have to pay Goff the first time situation. But if he didn't get it by then, he's too old to just keep trying to push that envelope. But with that being said, some other news in the NFL that will kind of change things for the Lions. Azeez Ojulari signed a 1-year deal with the Eagles for $4 million, which he got the same deal that we gave Tim Patrick. So I personally am a little salty about that. James, you made the comment in the group chat earlier today that, maybe he took less money to go to Philly, which is very, very possible and probably what happened. I just feel like if I'm Brad Holmes, I'd offer him 6. Who knows if he didn't? I mean, I'm not saying he didn't, but I just personally feel like the Eagles, yeah, they did just win the Super Bowl, but the Lions have the potential to win it too. So I feel if you were paid $2 million to go to a team that's not like, Tennessee or something, it would make sense. But with that being said, that just means we have to pivot yet again with pass rushers. Personally, I've said it on the pod many, many times. It's Von Miller or bust for me right now. Unfortunately, I just feel Von Miller's the only guy available that will make a huge difference for us right now, and he's not going to be worth a bunch of money. Another guy that I would be okay with, that I wouldn't like, if we got Von Miller, I would literally jump out of my chair excited because I know he's old as shit, but he is productive still, man. He had over 50 pressures last year, I think, and he only played 13 games. So he's still a pretty solid player. But with that being said, Charles Omenihu is another solid rotational guy. He's 27, so he's still relatively young. If we could get him on a 2-year deal, 3-year deal maybe, he'd be a great guy for us because he's been a rotational pass rusher basically his entire career, and he played with the Chiefs the last 2 seasons or 3 seasons, and he's been relatively productive. Now, he has had injury concerns. Not quite as bad as Marcus Davenport, but he's missed a handful of games every season. So I wouldn't be as excited about that. And then on another note with pass rushers, Trey Hendrickson is not very likely. He wasn't very likely to begin with, but now it sounds like the Bengals are asking for a first-round pick and more. Because it seems like they think they're going to get this deal done. So it sounds like Trey Hendrickson is likely going to be back in Cincinnati. And then last but not least, I just want to know what our plan is for guard. I don't know, man. Like I would say Graham Glasgow at right and then have Mahogany at left, which isn't terrible, don't get me wrong, but it's just not, it doesn't tell me best O-line in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see that and go, this is easily number 1. It's still top 5, depending on how Graham plays. But I did have, like, a back and forth with ex-Lions guard TJ Lang on Twitter the other day, which, shout out TJ. I, however, did not get my question answered. So he mentioned on Twitter about Manu, which we've talked about before, moving to guard. And I just simply asked, like, hey, why do you think he'd be good at guard? From what I saw, he looked really raw coming out of the draft. What do you see today that might change your mind? And it seemed like, I don't know if he understood the question, because, or maybe he just hasn't seen anything, which was kind of my assumption, because I never really got the reason why he'd be good at guard, or if like there's something that has happened recently that he's looked really good. But that's a potential thing. I mean, it's not insane to think that after a whole season and 2 off seasons, basically, that Manu could actually come in and do something for us. Now, is he going to start? Probably not. Most likely not. But he will probably be a key backup next year instead of what he was last year, which was basically a healthy scratch every week. So I could see Manu kind of taking that skipper role this year as like our extra lineman in certain situations and stuff, but that's about it, I think, for Manu right now. But with that being said, James, I'll pass it over to you, and you can have the floor if you have anything to add to that.
You touched up pretty much on what I wanted to say. There's still a couple free agent guards I wouldn't mind. Um, I heard a lot about Will Hernandez being in town. Not necessarily that he was here for a visit, but he took social media posts and pictures at the Lions team facility. Obviously, they don't just let anyone in there, so I don't know if he was just getting a physical. I don't know if he was talking numbers. I'm unaware of what exactly the point of his visit was in terms of specifics, but he's someone that I feel like could remedy our interior line situation, at least on the short term. As I said before in one of the other podcasts, I do see Manu kicking inside in the future. I still don't think he's ready yet, but I think that that is more than likely his home long term. And then in terms of the guards we have now, I do think Mahogany and Glasgow is who they are comfortable running with. Whether we are or not, I feel that the Lions are. Uh, just a simple one in, one out, Zeitler out for the rookie, oh, no longer rookie, sophomore Mahogany, who played well in his limited time, but I think he only played in 3 games total. And he did look very good. He did not look out of place even his very first start. He looked like he was a 5, 6 year vet. Very impressive stuff out of him. Uh, but Glasgow to me is a little bit of a wild card. I have been on X for years defending him. I really love Graham Glasgow. He's an A plus person, and for a long, long time he was an A plus center or guard. He just had a really bad year last year, so I'm hoping maybe they just trust that he can bounce back with it. Maybe maybe he was battling with an injury we didn't know about, and that might have limited him. I don't know. I don't want to per se build in an excuse, but if you look at his whole body of work, he's a pretty good guard up until besides last year. So I don't know if they're going to call it a one-off. I don't know if they're going to potentially draft someone and plug and play a rookie in one of the early round picks, or what their plan is on that. Um, my only other thing I wanted to add in terms of Lions is for pass rushers. I know you said Von Miller, who, don't get me wrong, I will take Von Miller, no questions asked, if that's what he wants to do. He is productive even though he's up there in age, but I once again, whether we like it or not, or the viewers at home like it or not, I think they're fine with who they have right now because essentially, other than McNeil, who reportedly probably will not start the season because he got injured so late in the season, we got our starting D line back from last year. Like we got Reader, we got McNeil, we have Hutch, and we have Davenport. Those were the 4 starters last year that we went into the season with. So at least on paper, I can understand if that is what they're willing to roll out week 1 this year as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And 2 things to add on the Glasgow front. This is kind of random, but I went to training camp just before this past season, and Graham Glasgow did not seem like he was enjoying himself in any way, shape, or form. It was very weird. Like I walked by him and just like snapped a picture, just like just like as I'm moving, took a picture of him because he was standing outside of the fence, where people are sitting, And the picture is like, he looks fucking pissed, bro. Like, just flat out not enjoying himself. So, and that could have something to do with maybe an injury that nagged him all season. Something like that. Maybe he was mad about having to be at left guard. I don't know what the case may be. Maybe he was just pissed because some guy was taking a picture of him that didn't ask. I don't know. But just something to, just food for thought on that one. And then the other thing is, a lot of people are forgetting Graham Glasgow is getting paid, or at least his cap hit is $8.5 million this year. So the fact that they did not cut him tells me that he's the starter. Like, they paid him more, or they are paying him more than they paid Zeitler last year, which kind of crazy if you ask me. I don't know. But again, Brad has his way of doing things. This is just the way he wants to do it. We might not always agree, but you know what? He's going to do what he wants. But at the end of the day, we're not the GM. So with that being said, Brad, I will pass it over to you, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I pretty much agree with everything that's been said here so far. I know we're sitting there pounding the table, as am I. I'd love to have Von Miller with the defensive end things. Guys, I have some very, very deep concerns about our guards. What do we know of Mahogany? We know that he has played one good game against Chicago. Chicago's D-line isn't exactly the monsters of the Midway. I think we saw that Glasgow looked his age last year. Didn't look very good at all. And I think I'm being kind when I say that. And I get moving from right guard to left guard. That is difficult. It's more difficult than people may think. But those are the biggest issues going into the draft for me. Question I pose is, what if Glasgow goes down? Then who's up? All right. What if Mahogany goes down? Then who's up? That's what really, really scares me. Guys, Zeitler was a Pro Bowler. Okay, let's keep that in mind now. All right, you're not going to. Graham Glasgow is not on the level of a Kevin Zeitler. He's just not. I could live with. I was going in perfectly. I thought for sure they're going to re-sign Zeitler. Then you got Mahogany switching in with Glasgow. Eventually, Mahogany takes over. But now that Zeitler goes, hey, I could see them, and I'd like to see them take a guard in the first round. Zabel from North Dakota State, who's up, can play up and down the line, who's got that mean streak. I think he would do very well. Will Hernandez is a guy I'd love to see him. He's got a mean streak. He's a road grader. He gets the pass protection done. I would feel a lot better if I knew we had a veteran across that line. So you got two big time question marks at your guard position right now, and you have no depth. So we've got to. I think that's something that we should definitely focus more on. When it comes to Manu, I'll give some props out to Lions Wire on X. I don't know if you guys have ever checked them out. They got video of Manu, and Manu's been working. It's a big time line camp for pros. It's with LaCharles Bentley, one of the best centers to play the game in the last 25 years, and it's showing what Manu can do. And his footwork looks night and day better than last year. Is he ready for prime time? Not yet. But we're here. We haven't had OTAs yet. But please, I'd like you guys to go check out that video. It'll make you feel a lot better about Manu. A lot better. Then lastly, I want to bring it back to Hooker. And I think Brad Holmes is the best GM the Lions have ever had, and so on and so forth. But this is a horrible pick. I think that we have realized that this pick is not going to come to fruition. Jared Goff goes down. I don't see, God forbid, but I don't see them saying, all right, here's the keys to the caddy. And then I think they bring another quarterback in. I think you saw that with Teddy Bridgewater. He's old. He obviously hasn't grasped the playbook yet, because they'd have a package in for him. If, they would have a package because of the style he played in Tennessee. Brad Holmes has not really hit on his third-round draft pick since he's been here now. Broderick Martin, that remains to be seen, but I don't feel very good about him. I think we could have got more. And Hendon Hooker, guys, there was guys in the third round. I don't remember who offhand, but they would have been starting for us right now. I'm pretty sure. So Yeah, I would not. I think Kyle Allen is still going to be one of those guys just to be in camp. I could see him being a camp cut, have another quarterback in the room, things like that. Because Jared Goff's not going to play one snap in the preseason. So you never know. Doesn't move a needle at all for me. Would I feel comfortable about Kyle Allen coming in? Nope, not at all. So Jared Goff, man, get wrapped in, get in that bubble wrap, because if you go down, then, and here's what could be ironic, right? Jared Goff gets injured because our guards couldn't block for him. How about that? How about that? Yeah. So get a guard early, Brad, please. That's all I got.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I do think though that drafting offensive line early was always the plan. I don't think it mattered what we did this year, because like if you even just coming into the season, if you looked at our contracts on the O line, like obviously Zeitler was leaving, Glasgow's getting paid a little too much, Ragnow's getting in the 30s, and Decker is getting a little to the end of his run, I think too. So I think no matter what, we had to at least pick one, if not two O-linemen this draft. But with that being said, I still would like to add a veteran, like you said, just because you never know if Glasgow goes down or if he just doesn't look that good. I mean, you can cut him post June 1 and still get all that money back. So I could see keeping him on until we can sign a new guy and seeing what they look like in camp, and whoever wins, cut the other guy, or, whatever the case may be. But with that being said, I don't necessarily think we should take one in the first round, simply because I think edge is a bigger need right now. Like, I don't care what anybody says, man. We got rid of Zadarius Smith. Can you name who's going to be on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson right now? Fucking Marcus Davenport? That's what I'm saying. Like Pascal? That's scary. That's scary. As a Lions fucking fan, that scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
like no team is going to go, Josh Pascal, man, we got to worry about that guy. And no disrespect to him, he's a solid player, but that's what he is. He's very solid. He's consistent. He stops the run well. But he's not, fucking hope and pray that he does, but he's not going to come in and take that next step and be a double-digit sack guy next year. He's just not. And like, I love Brad Holmes, and I agree with most of the things he does. The one thing that I disagreed with when it happened was the T.J. Hawkinson trade. I was pissed when we did that. Now, this feels similar. It worked out for us, though. I will say, T.J. Hawkinson we traded him. We got Sam Laporta. The rest is history. Now, if he doesn't hit on that Laporta pick, maybe we're talking about it in a different light, but he did, so it doesn't matter. But the point is that I will hold judgment or reserve judgment until the draft, because I think with pick 28, we're going to take the best player available, whether that be a guard or a defensive lineman. Same thing with our second round and our third round picks. And at the end of the day, it's up to Brad to decide what is worth it to you to take that first round pick and that second round pick and that third round pick. If it were me, I'm going edge, guard, interior D-line, just like that. And I think we're going to be great with that, simply because the interior defensive line class is very, very deep. You could get a guy like Jamari Caldwell, who I'm a big fan of. You might even be able to get him in the fourth round. So something to think about. And he's not, the most insane prospect, but man, get him on this D line and get him our coach Casey Rogers, and I think he'll make some moves. Now, with that being said, I still do think edge is the number one obvious need. We have to get someone to go across from Aiden. Like especially after we cut Zadarius Smith. Cutting him, like, if we didn't cut him, I would feel probably 50% better than I do right now. But the fact that we got rid of him and aren't doing shit about getting somebody else in his spot just doesn't. I don't like it. And instead of signing Von Miller, we're signing fucking, and no disrespect, we're signing fucking Mitchell Agude. And it's like, great, that's awesome. I'm happy for him. Woo-hoo! Is he even going to play? Like, is he going to play a snap, Brad? Is this what we're doing now? Like, are we fucking re-signing guys who literally will not play? They're going to be healthy scratches on game day. And we're wasting our time re-signing them instead of making other moves. Now, not to say that's what's happening. I'm just saying, if that's the case, it's not a great look. Now, obviously, like I mentioned, there are still some good players available that we could get in free agency. So until it's all said and done, I'm just gonna chill and put my trust in Brad.
I
Um,
got
yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, thanks. Uh, I think we know Holmes has got a real penchant for Alabama players, and I think that's great. And I did notice that they already had a guy in for an interview, and we all know that Brad will trade capital to move up. So I really want us to keep an eye on Campbell from Alabama.
Yes.
Okay, you're looking at a Will Anderson Jr. here. Okay, possibly much along those lines, where you've got the hybrid. He can rush the passer. He can stop. He can drop back in coverage. He is a hybrid. So, boy, wouldn't I mean Will Anderson 2.0 on that other side? Yeah. So I think if he starts falling out of that, let's say he gets to 12. Let's say he gets to 12. That's their magic number, isn't it? Isn't 12 the magic number? Didn't two Alabama guys come there at 12? Keep an eye on it. I'm just saying. I love it. So.
Yeah, and actually that's a good point because I'm a big fan of Jihad Campbell, and I feel like he would be a great player for this defense because, like you said, he can kind of do it all. And I think that now this is just pure speculation, but I do think Kelvin Shepard is going to come in and run a bit of a different defense than Aaron Glenn did. I think he's still going to have the same philosophy, like we get after it, we hit hard, we fuck people up. But I think he's going to come out in different fronts. I think he might use a little bit more zone coverage. And that's just because, think about it, he's a linebacker, right? Aaron Glenn is a corner. Aaron Glenn wants to be face up with you every play. I'm locking your shit down, buddy. Calvin Shepard understands, like, zone coverage is a necessity, and especially for linebackers. So just kind of think about that. I think Jihad Campbell could be one of those guys that Calvin Shepard is banging the table for, like, I need this guy on my defense. So that makes a lot of sense. And now, James, I'll pass it back to you if you have anything else to add.
Hindsight is obviously 2020, but going back to the Hendon Hooker pick with who we could have had and all that kind of stuff, I'm only going to name one name because I can probably scroll through the draft and find a couple. Hendon Hooker, and you can see it on X accuracies all over. Due to his age, because he was 25 when he was eligible to be drafted on draft day, I'm like, we had Goff, even if he didn't get a second contract, I don't know if a year or two, he's now 27, if he was ever going to be the answer for us. Maybe if he went to a Carolina or a Giants or a different situation, it would have panned out different. But one name we could have had instead of uh, Hendon Hooker is a guy named Puka Nakua, who went a couple rounds later. And, we're talking about we need an next receiver. So, I mean, that would have been nice. But I'm not going to drag Brad because, A, that is using hindsight. I don't know anyone on draft day that was saying this is the guy, get Puka Nakua. But
No.
that still would be nice, though. But yeah, that is using hindsight. And then the only other thing I want to touch on for Brad is, and I understand because we drafted Broderick Martin in the third round as well, and he has struggled slightly with some third round picks. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. He also drafted Kirby Joseph in the third round, and I think that pick's worked out pretty nice so far. So in Brad we trust. We're going to let him
Andolene
do his
McNeil.
thing. Andoline McNeil, thank you. Yeah, because Onzarike was a second rounder who's for now looking nice. He came off his back injury. It took him a little while to get going, but now he's looking pretty dang nice. And then I don't want to get too far into it because then it can become a whole draft show. But there's only three names right now in the draft that excite me as a Lions fan if we get. And you mentioned one of them with Campbell. I also like Booker, the guard from Alabama, so we can double dip at another Crimson Tide. And then Mike Green, the defensive end out of Marshall. I mean, right there's kind of three positions of need. I don't know too much about linebacker because, like you said, he's the hybrid, kind of a Clay Matthews role. Um, but he's just a football player. Like, just put him somewhere and he'll play. We traded up for JMO, like you said. We trade up when we see a guy we want. We traded up for Giovanni Manu. Granted, that's in the fourth round, but we still traded up for him. Brad will not hesitate to wheel and deal and use those picks as leverage and get the guys he wants. So if Brad wants a guy, he will just go get them. And at least for now, those are the three names that I would keep my eye on.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I would also say, excuse me, I would also say that with the Hendon Hooker stuff, like I was not in this camp, but some people thought he was going to be a first round pick if he hadn't torn his ACL. So like if you think about it that way, it's like I get it in the moment of taking him because it's like, dude, if this kid fucking works out, we can ship Goff's ass out of town for a couple picks, and now we got a rookie contract quarterback for the next couple years. And not to get too much on a tangent with this, but I did post on Twitter recently talking about how Jared Goff's contract is holding us back. And a lot of people didn't understand what I meant. I got a lot of hate talking about you're a hater of Goff and all this and that. No, it's simple. He's got a $70 million cap hit next year, folks. $70 million. That's the most of any quarterback in the NFL by like 10, 15 million. So Brad's going to have to restructure that. Now, with that being said, do I think Goff is the best quarterback in the NFL? No. Do I think he's top 5? No. Do I think he's top 10? Yeah. He's in that 6 to 10, I would say. He's in the back half of the really good quarterbacks. But with that being said, do I think that we shouldn't have re-signed him? No. What I'm saying is the fact that he's getting paid so much makes it hard for Brad right now to go out and sign a pass rusher in free agency, to go sign a defensive tackle or whatever the case may be. It makes it so much harder. You have to penny pinch. So with that being said, I would not be surprised if Brad Holmes is looking hard at quarterbacks for the next 3 years at minimum. Because if I'm him, Goff's about to be 30. When this contract is done, he'll be 32, 33. I would probably be starting to look to move on. Now, you might call me crazy, but that's just because it's not because Goff isn't good. Don't get me wrong. It's because the contract is a killer when you draft as well as you do when you're Brad Holmes. You're essentially going to have to start saying to yourself, do I keep Goff or do I sign one of my, first round picks from a couple years ago? Just, food for thought on that. And then moving on to more NFL specific stuff, and we'll kind of wrap this up pretty quick. There's not too much going on right now. Obviously, we have the Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson fiasco at this point is what I would call it. It sounds like right now Rodgers is waiting on Minnesota to make up their mind on whether or not they want him. So if he doesn't go to Minnesota, it sounds like he'll probably go to Pittsburgh, which means Russell Wilson is waiting to see what Rodgers is going to do because he's got Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and the Giants. I don't really see a way that Rodgers goes to the Giants unless Pittsburgh doesn't want him. And I think they're waiting on him too, just simply because they haven't signed Russ. I think they're going to go ahead and try to be, pretty aggressive after Russ if they don't get Rodgers, simply because I think they came into free agency thinking we're gonna re-sign Fields or Russ, and Fields just a flat out left. So took one of their guys off the table. And then next up, Cooper Kupp got got cut, and then signed with the Seahawks of all teams, which makes sense for him. But they gave him 3 years, $45 million. Insane, $15 million a year. I did not see that happening, especially over 3 years. Maybe a 1 year, $15 million. Cool, that makes sense. They don't have any receivers over there. Give Darnold something to throw to. But 3 years, 45 for a 31-year-old, 32-year-old receiver who literally, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, he has not played more than, I think, 13 games like ever outside of his 1 year of winning Offensive Player of the Year. Like he never finishes a season. And he also has not had 1,000 yards more than that season, I believe. So just kind of take that into account. He's not going to come in and be your wide receiver 1. And on top of that, him and Jackson Smith and Jigba play very similar styles and roles. So it'll be weird to see how that, works out. And then something we didn't talk about too much, I know it's a little bit old news, but Joey Bosa signed in Buffalo for, I think it was $12.6 million on a 1-year deal. I don't love the money that he got, but man, Buffalo is doing a good job in free agency right now, and I don't love that. They're one of the teams that last year, it seemed like it seemed like at the beginning of the year they weren't going to be shit, and then Josh Allen just kind of, brought them back from the grave. And then they ended up being one of the better teams in the league towards the end of the year. And they got a lot better this offseason. So just something to take into account. And then the last few things here. I love me some cold-hearted irony, don't you? I just love it when someone talks a bunch of shit and then gets fucking traded. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, buddy, what are we doing here? You talked so much shit in the offseason. You talked shit before the Super Bowl. You brought us up before the fucking Super Bowl to talk shit. Now your ass is playing in Houston. You won a Super Bowl. I'm happy for you. But Philly said, for the second time, they said, nah, we're good. So, just saying, that's all. Now, with that being said, on some more positive news, Najee Harris to the LA Chargers might be my favorite free agent signing of the entire period. That is going to be an absolute nasty backfield now. Najee Harris fantasy managers are all rejoicing right now because now he's in a spot where he's going to get fed the ball behind a solid O-line. And they're going to do, I think, pretty well with him over there. And then last but not least, the Bengals just gave Jamar Chase over $40 million and and T. Higgins 28.75. So if you think about it this way, right, they just spent, what is it, $70 million on two wide receivers. $70 million fucking dollars, guys.
Per year.
What? Per year. Per year. Yeah. That's a good ad there because what the fuck? What the fuck? And if I'm sorry, I know Joe Burrow loves his wide receivers. If I'm Cincinnati, I'm saying T. Higgins, see ya. The fuck out of here, buddy. I'll ship your ass to New England for a fucking second rounder this year and a second rounder next year and call it a day. Why? Because you can draft another receiver, not as good as T. Higgins, but that can play a role, or you can sign one, and now you have a second round pick to try to get an O-line because your O-line still fucking stinks. Your defense is bad. Now there's rumors going around they're going to re-sign Trey Hendrickson. That could be pretty good for them, but that means they would at that point be paying $100 million to three players. That's not even factoring their quarterback who makes $60 million a year. $160 million to four players, and by the way, the cap is only $290, so that means you got about $130 to pay the whole rest of your team. Good luck.
I hope that Higgins and Chase can beat Travis Hunter because they're going to need him.
Right.
And I think maybe the Bengals think that they're playing 7-on-7 because who the fuck are they going to block? Seriously, who's going to block for him? Who? Bengals going to bangle. Bengals going to bangle.
Yeah, it reminds me of that meme that went around when they drafted Jamar over Penei Sewell, and it's like Joe Burrow with Penei Sewell in front of him to anyone, dot. And then it's like Joe Burrow with anyone in front of him to Jamar Chase, the ball hits the fucking ground before he even makes it there. So it's like, that's what they're doing. And they released their starting guard to make money to do this. I don't know. But with that being said, James, I'll pass it over to you if you got anything to add.
As soon as I saw those extensions, Brad is the first person that come to my mind. I know in one of the prior podcasts we talked about, is a non-quarterback worth $40 million a year? At the time, Crosby was the highest paid non-quarterback at $35.5 million a year. Since then, Garrett got $40 million a year. Now Chase got $40 million a year. T. Higgins is, it even said in the main breaking news article when they signed at the same time that he is the highest number 2 receiver in the league. What they don't mention is overall totality for the league, he is the 9th highest paid receiver. So the Bengals have 2 top 10 paid receivers plus Burrow plus whatever they're going to do with Hendrickson. I don't know what they were going to do over there. Like you guys said, they're playing 7-on-7 or something. Or they might have to march Chase out there as if he's a hunter and play him at corner or safety or something else. Just go play center field. But some of these contracts, and I don't want to be that guy because I know these guys put their bodies on the line. They train year round, blah, blah, blah. But holy crap, when it's jumped 5 million in the market, because I understand if, like, St. Brown got 30 and then AJ Brown got like 31, 32, and it steadily increases. I mean, that's the market. That's the way it's always been. But when Max Crosby gets 35 and then Garrett gets 40, or Justin Jefferson got 35 and now Chase gets 40, like, why is there a $5 million per year gap in the coverage now? Also, with T. Higgins making 26 a year, being the ninth highest paid receiver as a number two now, JMO's contract's coming up. Do we have to give JMO 27 to match and make that the next? Or, like, is that the contract that he's going to ask for? Is someone going to give it to him? Maybe it's a New England or not Detroit, but he's my favorite line, so I'd hate to lose him, but I also don't know if I'd pay him that much money. So some of these contracts are just getting way out of hand. And one thing, although you did not bring it up, but Stingley, the cornerback for Houston, just got an extension as well, and he is the first cornerback to break 30 million per season. So now you have a defensive end making 40 a year in Garrett, Chase making 40 a year as a receiver, and now corners making 30 a year. So I know he just had his rookie season, so we got to worry because we have the fifth year option and yada, yada, yada. It's 4 or 5 years down the road. But Terry and Arnold, when his contract's up, I'm like, is he going to be 32, 33? I mean, that is quite a bit down the road, but just something to think about. I know the cap always goes up, but it does not go up by this number for this many superstars.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, because I was gonna mention how T. Higgins is only getting $1.25 million less than Amon-Ra is right now, which I find just fucking baffling. Like, and mind you, Amon-Ra is getting paid more than Penei Sewell. Just saying, just saying. If the Bengals drafted Sewell to begin with, they save like fucking $15 million a year, and they're better off. I don't know. O-line, all I'm going to say is I'm an O-line coach, and motherfucker, goddamn it, nobody on offense would do a goddamn thing without the O-line. So, period, most valuable players, most valuable position on that field is the offensive line, because I don't give a fuck if you got Patrick Mahomes. We saw it. We saw it in the Tampa Bay Super Bowl. Even just last year with the Eagles. If he doesn't have a great O-line, what does he look like? A fucking regular dude. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, I appreciate you guys for watching. For St. Patrick's Day, I figured we would send you off with something a little different than normal. I'm going to finish this on the pod. Fuck it. Why not, right? Let's get it.
You young pups, man. You young pups.
I would edit this ASAP just so that way.
Yeah, please don't puke it all over your screen.
Oh, buddy, I'm Irish. I handle this shit. It's nothing.
Well, hey.
No, but I just figured... Oh, damn, that's hitting my chest. I just figured best way to do a send-off, chug me some whiskey, give a good Irish goodbye. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys for watching. This is Michigan Sports Media Network. As always, we have Brad Thompson at BT8Ball. We have James Gullett at Gullett_James, and myself at Jace O'Sweet. You can find us at MI Sports Media on Twitter and Instagram, or misportsmedia.com for all of our articles. Keep up to date, and we'll see you guys on the next one.